All right, hey, welcome to episode 11. That's what he said. This is Derek. That's Mike over there, and Mike. We are out of the last 3 episodes. We've got now our second guest, Mrs. Abby here. So
we're on fire.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, we went on a string for like months in between these things, and I think this is our third episode in the last 14 days. So
we're finally
right.
Cheers to us, man.
We're
doing this. So no, we're very, very excited today. We've talked in the last couple of episodes about kind of our relationship and our backstory. And I think what we're most excited about is not only just hearing your perspective, but your perspective is a little bit different than I think what we've been talking about. So we spent the last 2 hours kind of pre this recording, just, getting to know Abby a little bit better and her backstory. So we're very much excited. So to kind of kick this off, if you wouldn't mind, just officially introduce yourself and maybe give a little background about all things you.
Sure. So I went to Southport High School and didn't move to Franklin until after I had my son, Austin. Went through college, worked a lot of jobs, and met my ex-husband at a bar. I had been in a string of long-term relationships from, not the best place to meet somebody, FYI. But I had a long string of monogamous long-term relationships with kind of people who really were not very good for me, not good for Austin. And then the relationship I had with my ex-husband was also not very good. But we were married in 2012. It was not a good relationship from the beginning. It was full of emotional, sometimes physical abuse. There was just a lot of not really on the same page with what a relationship meant and what parenting was supposed to be. And I am an idiot, so I still stuck with it for a really long time. But I have, in my childhood, grew up in church and I'm a pastor's daughter. And so there was a lot of pressure to be married, to provide my kid with a real family, I want to say. And it was just a lot of pressure from a lot of different perspectives to provide that for my son and to make us whole. And so that was one of the reasons why I stayed in those really terrible relationships for longer than I probably should have, including my marriage.
Okay, so that's why you stayed.
Yeah.
Why do you think you got into it? Like, where were you at in your life where you were like, because like you said, not the best for you still.
Yeah.
What made him good for you, not the best at that time?
I think that I
really needed a family.
It was that. It was the pressure of having a real family. It was also the idea, like you guys have talked about in previous episodes, of like saving somebody or feeling like you could impact someone's life so that they could turn it around. Feeling like I offer a lot to the table. And so if you think that, or if you're in a situation where you need help, I can help you. And so that savior complex of, I must, if I'm who I think I am, you'll change for me.
Right.
Right.
I think that's another episode we need to have where we all at one point felt like we're such a great catch. We're so awesome. Like somebody would be so lucky to have us. Yet we find the worst fucking person to bring into our lives. Like, what is that? What is that? Are we full of shit? Do we just think we're the best and think we can just do whatever we want? Like, what is that? It's a really bad habit we need to figure out, like, for real.
Yeah, the whole fixture complex, I think, is going to be a whole nother episode. Yeah. Before we get into your actual, relationship with, your ex-husband, prior to that, we were talking a little bit before we kick this off. Much like Mike, much like myself, you had a child young. Yep. So I know you're saying that you went out of state for college and unexpectedly got pregnant. Maybe talk about that experience and kind of at an early age, maybe how that shaped you a little bit.
Yeah, I think I just said I've never been an adult without being a mom. So I've never been able to be free of that responsibility. So I got pregnant at 19, had Austin just right after I turned 20. And then it was on. It was like the pressure was on to get as educated as I possibly could get, to get the best job I could get, to support my family. And then the other pressures of, when are you going to get married and have a real family? Because you're obviously not capable of doing this by yourself. So there was that. I mean, that's just the way it is when you grow up in the kind of family and the kind of faith religion I grew up in, where,
What religion was it, by the way?
I mean, it was non-denominational Christian, but it was this idea that the ultimate goal for a woman in life is to have a family, be in the kitchen, make sandwiches.
I need to find me that woman.
Get married, have babies, and stay home with your kids. And that was like the ultimate goal, right? And have as many kids as you can have, and and be your the helpmate to your husband, right? Serve your husband, submit, all that stuff. So that was the pressure that I was under from the minute that I got pregnant with Austin.
See, and that's one of the things that, just to press you a little bit, because same deal. I found out 19, gonna be a dad. By 20, had my daughter, but at the time was still in the relationship with their mom, who ultimately turned into my wife. And so there was the support of the other side, and just trying to at least figure that out. And there's a whole complex of you're an early adult and you're still trying to figure yourself out. Now you're trying to raise a kid. Your situation was different, because not only are you going through all that stuff, but you don't even really have the support of the father, which, just talk about that for a minute, about what that, what you were thinking at the time.
Austin's dad was not involved from the minute that I found out I was pregnant to about when Austin was 4, they met each other. That was a difficult situation. There was no relationship there. So it wasn't like there was any, it wasn't really like hard feelings even, but it was just me. It was, I was on my own. And so that's kind of, it's funny because my sister was in a similar situation where she got pregnant before she got married, but the person she's married to now is the father of their oldest. And then they've gone on and had more kids. And so that happened after my situation. So it was a little like, oh man, I couldn't even have that. I didn't have anybody with me raising kids, which is why I immediately jumped into having these long-term relationships and trying to force that into creating this real family for Austin. When, it would have been better if I had just let the two of us figure it out for a little while and then done. I didn't really even date. I met someone, we went for 2 years. I met someone, we went for 2 years. That was the pattern. And so there was just no, I don't even know what to say. Just there was no time for me to be single, even as a mom. It was just one long-term relationship after the other, because the ultimate goal is, how can I get married and how can I provide this real family for Austin?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and to say, just a quick pause. I would even, Mike, he's got the same situation, me, all of these things, you still, for as stressful as that time was, all of the things that you've accomplished up to this point, we're good parents, good jobs, we have strived to better ourselves. And so through all of the challenges, you even look at, these couples where on paper, everything looks, they've been married for 6 years, they have that kid, there's stresses with just that type of normal path. You look at our paths, give yourself some grace, give yourself some credit. You've got these wonderful kids now. And there's been a lot of obstacles. So, we'll get into all the details, but one of the things I feel I've tried to learn a lot is just gratitude, right?
Yeah.
You got to be
grateful for what
be grateful for what you have, and try to give yourself some credit. The path really maybe hasn't been normal, according to society standards, but man, we're good people, and we've done a good job, and our kids have good head on their shoulders. So
100%. I think we're all doing a kick-ass job. Honestly.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
yeah.
it's yeah.
I think it was important for me because when I found out I was pregnant, there were people in my life who immediately said, your life is over. You're never going to accomplish what you want to. You're not going to be able to do these things that you've had goals for your life. And so that's like challenge accepted. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to be successful and to take care of my kid and to not need anybody else in the same way. Now, I still wanted a partner. I still wanted a relationship, and I still wanted someone else to help me raise this kid. But it was like, if I don't have that, I'm going to be able to do it on my own. So I definitely took that on as a challenge to be like, you know, I'm going to do this whether you like it or not. And now I'm in a doctoral program and I'm running a health center. And so there's like,
Fucking
no way.
Let's go.
There's like no stopping me. So once someone tells me I can't do something, that's the moment that's like, okay,
Yeah,
I'll do it.
100%.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about how flawless and easy it is with our exes, with the kids, to like do things like birthdays, to like, hey, I got to do this, like I need you to do this. So what's it like when you don't have that? Like, so let's say a birthday. Do you need to communicate with each other about what's going on? There's none. Okay,
Yeah,
so
no.
good.
It's not good. So the situation that I'm in, we got divorced. It happened really quickly. There's restraining orders involved. There was some, there was some bad stuff that kind of happened as I was getting divorced. And so that has led into this really bad kind of co-parenting situation where I am always the one that's trying to make the situation better. And my ex-husband is really not interested in making that a better situation. And so that's really tough for me because like I want to communicate all the time. I want us to be able to do birthday parties together or do things like that. And I see you guys like be able to do that. I'm so jealous. But but it's like it's that situation of, I can only do so much. I cannot force another person to communicate well with me. We are not married today because we could not communicate. So the communication is not going to get better now. I was just going to say over time, I hope that gets better. We've been divorced now for 18 months. So hopefully at some point it will get better. But there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of anger still. There's a lot, not necessarily even on my part, because I'm exponentially happier now that I'm not married.
Do you protect your kids from that? Do you like try to lie to them? You're like, oh, your dad's gonna do this, or do you let them know like, hey, like this is your dad's day. He doesn't want you. I'm sorry. Like, how do you handle that with the kids?
We've only had one real situation where I've had to say kind of the truth. Not that I'm lying to them about anything, but there's things a 5 and a 3-year-old don't necessarily need to know. That's not age appropriate.
100%. So let's say 5 years from now, and now they're that much older. And they start asking questions like, why does dad do this? Why are you guys not together? How come we don't see dad very much? Do you feel like you're going to tell them the truth? Do you feel like you're going to protect them?
I think I'm going to tell them the truth in a protective way. Okay. So whatever's age appropriate for them to know, whatever, I think there are definitely things that they don't need to know specific details about, but I think they need to know the truth about who we are as their parents and the mistakes that we both made. So I'm not perfect.
You don't feel obligated to make them feel like their dad is better than what he is?
No, not at all. And to be fair, with Austin, who doesn't have a relationship with his biological father, there have been times when I've had to tell him the truth. Yeah. But over time, he's learned that on his own. Yeah. I don't need to say, this guy sucks. Austin knows he sucks.
I mean, from a guy,
I don't need to say that out loud. You know that. And so, and while I can talk to my kid about that when he has an issue or when he comes to me and says, can we talk about this? Sure. My girls might do that too. But there's no reason why I can't say, like, at a certain point, they're going to know who he is. They're going to understand those things. If I've taught them how to recognize, those behaviors and stand up for themselves and create boundaries like you guys were talking about, it's my responsibility to teach them those things so that they get in healthy relationships when they're my age, instead of doing what I did not knowing.
Yeah.
Totally
agree.
Yeah.
100%.
So you, during your marriage, there was a lot of trials and tribulations. We talked prior to the episode about all the things that you try to do to make it work and make it fix. Like, I guess if you can kind of summarize, and you don't have to give all the specific details, but I mean, you were married, you guys were 12 years, right?
We were together for 12, married for 7.
And
11 and 7.
It sounded like there was just a lot that happened over those 12 years. So talk a little bit about all of the things that you felt like you tried to do to make it work, but ultimately you eventually finally came to the realization, like, I just can't do this anymore. Because I think everybody's got those stories of, and Mike and I have shared not so much our marriages, but some of the relationships post-divorce where it just took, a sledgehammer to the face finally to be like, I got to get out of this. This is not. So,
yes.
Okay. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay. So my ex-husband is an alcoholic, and there is no reasoning, there's no rationale, there's no logic with someone who can't stay sober. And so there is a lot of things that happen that we face together, but I really faced on my own. So we had several miscarriages. We lost 4 pregnancies over the course of only a few years. Then we had babies, and those, the babies that lived and that we had together are amazing, but that's tough on any relationship. And we didn't know, like, we came into our relationship with kids already. And so we didn't necessarily know how each other was going to be with a baby. And so there's cultural differences there. I was married to someone who's not the same culture as me. So there's a lot of cultural differences with who's responsible for what, and gender. There's like those roles, those those traditional gender roles. And I am not that kind of person. While I like doing some of those things, I wanted a partner, and that's not what I got in my marriage. And so while there's all these like things that happened, it was always this underlying, like, elephant in the room of, when is he going to get in trouble again? When is he, like, when is this house of cards all going to fall down? And so it was always this kind of in the back of my mind, this is all going to go to shit someday, and I'm going to have to figure this out. So I went back to school, and I got my master's degree, and I kept climbing the career ladder, and I bought a house and did all these things because I knew at some point this was going to collapse as far as my relationship goes. While I still tried to do everything I could to hold it together, the last DUI that he got was kind of the deal breaker of, you know what, I've got to figure out how I'm gonna provide for these kids, how I'm gonna get Abby back, and how I'm gonna do this on my own, because I can't count on this person to be my partner.
And I'll ask you this, Mike, and this is like the thing that, like, I guess and thank you so much, by the way, for sharing. Like, I know what some of the things you just said, with this, like, that's not, so coming on here and especially saying that and knowing that we're going to publicize this. So, like, that's not easy. So thank you for saying that stuff. I know it's not easy. But like, at this point in life, like, we have kids and if we're moving on with our lives, you're going to meet people. Everybody's got baggage at this point or something. And like, one of the things I think I still struggle with a little bit is trying to find somebody that is at least on the same wavelength, to where there's going to be stresses from their past or whatever. And like, how is it to where, like, you can break those silos down and have like an honest, conversation and communication and trying to work together? It's not like a fixing thing. Like, I don't need to fix you, but like, you've got your shit, and like, I'm here to support you, but there's boundaries there. Like, that is always interesting, because it sounds like, the cultural differences or these things, like, at what point do you kind of draw the limit of like, all right, like, I'm not just supporting you, like, I have to carry you along. And so, like, I think, I mean, for me, like, I still struggle with that, I guess.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think it goes back to the boundaries thing. you have actual boundaries and you know your limits, those people won't seep in and won't be able to sabotage you or make you feel a certain way to where you want to help. You know, if you just have these specific boundaries, like those people will not get through. I mean, I really do. I honestly think it's the most important thing in the world is to have boundaries.
I had no boundaries.
Yeah.
None
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Same.
This dude walked all over me. He did everything possible to get me to walk away. And I was like, but I love him. It was that whole thing. And it was a lot of my childhood, my growing up of, you know, do as long as you know that you've done everything 100% and you can walk away. And so then there was this pressure. Well, have I done everything I can do to save this? I don't want to give up. I married this person. I made a vow. I had, you know, before God. Yeah. You know, so then also really being the first person to ever get divorced in my family.
Yeah, it's a big stress. Like, I mean, religion and all that stuff is a big factor with that.
Yeah.
Stuff. It really is.
And my family is supportive, so it's not that they're not supportive, but it's
in
just
like head,
I've convinced myself that there's this like, you know, everybody's looking down on me saying, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
and
I gotta be strong.
When really, and you know, there's the memes out there, there's the things out there that say, you know, 50 years ago, our parents did everything they could to stay together, and now everybody just throws their relationships away. And that's such bullshit. Because like I did everything I could do. And it, you know, I don't deserve to stay in a toxic relationship.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Because
it's not healthy to stay.
I made a vow. Yeah. You know what? He didn't hold up his end of the bargain at all, ever, one time.
But like, I mean,
so
we talk about these boundaries, and like that's where it's like what like you're just talking about, like so very tangible example, which is always great. It's like, oh, boundaries, and like you can get loose. But like, okay, if you're with your guy and there's been some alcohol related issues and there's been DUIs, like a very clear boundary is like, listen, I am committed to trying to make this work, but if you prioritize alcohol and inevitably get another DUI, that is proof to me that you are not serious enough about this relationship. So if it happens again, we are done.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a very strong person to be like, okay, if that happens, it doesn't matter that we have kids, doesn't matter that we've had all this stuff, like I'm done. Like I'm like, I laid it out there for you. You prioritize something else over our relationship, and like you gotta walk away. And like that's what I mean, that's what's the toughest part. Like that is probably more extreme.
2 years.
I mean that's
so he got a DUI and I still didn't leave until 2017 to 19. Like there was still 2 years in between that where I was like, but maybe I can fix this. I cannot fix this.
Yeah, maybe I can fix it.
Right. I cannot fix him. Yeah. He has a drinking problem. He has to fix that. He has to choose to fix that. He still has not chosen to fix that. So that's not on me anymore. No. And I guess I put on myself that it was my responsibility to fix that. Yeah. And it's not. That's not.
I'm telling you right now, next relationship, I ain't fixing shit. You got anything wrong. It's not on me. I'm not fucking touching it.
Right.
Get your shit together and we can work this out. Right. That's it. I'm done. Right. I'm done with it.
But that's been done. I mean, for 2020, like I mean,
shit together.
The biggest takeaway for me, like doing these podcasts, is that whole concept around boundaries, and it's something that I never even knew to talk about this stuff. But like that example, I think is a very like blatant and clear one. But there's things early on, like if you don't know what you're looking for, what you want, if you're not intentional, like I mean, for the people that are out there like just want to have fun, like that's a different thing. And we've talked about it in previous podcasts. But for people that are looking for something meaningful, so here's like 5 or 6 core things that like are important to me, and I know if I sacrifice them, I'm gonna give up. Like a piece of me is gonna die a little bit because like I'm gonna bend on them, and like it's nice because I have somebody and there's that, but like you're not doing something that I know is important to me, and it's just over time it's gonna erode, and eventually you're gonna be unhappy. Yeah. And it's taken me this long to finally figure it out, but that's why I appreciate you, like us doing this and you sharing your stories, because like you try, you fixed and you moved your boundaries, you didn't have them, and then like the fucking pain that you like endured over all these years, like it sucks, but like you finally get to the point, it's like, all right, now I know. Now at least I know. Yeah. You know?
I think that it was I don't want to say I regret any of that either, because I got my kids out of it. Right. I did learn a lot about myself. There were times that were definitely terrible, but I mean, and we had some good times together too. But there wasn't like, I never felt secure in my relationship. Never. felt like it was just like waiting for that next thing to happen that was going to ruin everything. And so I didn't know that at the beginning. You know, I said, I'm telling you right now, when he showed up at my house after our first date and I said, hey, I'm not fucking around anymore. I want to get married. I want to have more kids. I want to get my master's degree. I want to do X, Y. These are the things I want. If you're not interested in that, we can be friends. That's fine. Well, he did a really good job of convincing me of that in the first couple of months, that those were all the same things he wanted to do, right?
Mhm.
And so I got caught up in that. And then, unfortunately, too deep once.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, it was once I was in too deep, curtains. I mean, there was nothing I could do, because then all of a sudden we've been together now for 2 years and he's like, I really don't want to have more kids.
Yo.
Okay, well, that's not what I signed up for
Yeah.
a long time ago. I told you what I wanted, but now you have a relationship with my kid. We're living together. This is a whole situation. So then, you know, then it's convincing that other person to have more kids with you once you get married. And then that turned into kind of a disaster too. So it was all these things, always trying to force something, a square peg in a round hole, always forcing it and like begging that person to just like, if you would just do this, everything will be fine.
We talked about this. I mean, that was our last episode. It's like
Yeah.
you find yourself like once you get in too deep and you're there, it's like, all right, like this isn't great, but like I'm in it.
But at
like,
least I'm getting this or this.
yeah, they've met my kids and like maybe
Yeah.
they help me out or they give me some affection, like whatever it is that like fills some form of the need that you have. But there's clear things that are missing, but then you start making excuses. Like, you're like, oh, like, well, man, like that's, you know, I'll rationalize that or minimize that, or it's not that big of a deal, or I'll just keep talking to them about it and eventually they'll come around. Like, fuck that, man.
Yeah. And I got into a situation where he was gaslighting me. I thought for sure, like, this is not normal. This is not how a normal relationship is supposed to be. This is not like, if I told my friends about this, they would be like, what is happening?
All right. So
isn't that funny though? You can say that, but at the same time, just doing it anyways.
Yes.
You go, if I told my friends like this,
Because he
crazy.
did such a good job of convincing me
that
this was normal, and that I was too sensitive, or that I was overreacting. Like, who overreacts to a DUI? Like, that's not overreacting.
Yeah.
So we talk about like the whole, I mean, that gaslighting term gets thrown around like, so like give a specific example, like to whatever you say, like tell a story about like you knew there was a truth or called him out about something and he either blatantly convinced you like you misunderstood that situation or the way that you saw it was wrong. I mean, is there one that comes to mind that you're like, I mean, I know for a fact
I could tell you 1,000 stories about times where he got so shit-faced and was so awful and did all these things. And like, if anyone else had observed that, they would be like, get out of there now. But he would come around the next morning and be like, everything's fine. It's not a big deal. I just got drunk. Like, it wasn't that. And
make you feel
like
you're
1,000 times. I could give you, I mean,
like almost make
we
you
could
feel
be
like
here
you,
all night. Yes.
you overreacted.
God, you're being
like,
ridiculous.
what do you mean? I wasn't that drunk. I remember everything. And
What do
I'm
you
like,
mean?
you peed in the corner of our bedroom.
No, that was you.
Right. Like, it was, those kinds of things are like what sticks out to me, like as this, like, I would go to bed thinking this cannot be my real life, and then wake up the next morning and do it all over again. And that's like, and he would be like, everything's fine. And he'd show some affection and I'd be sucked right back in.
Mike, you know
And
that
so-
life?
No,
Yeah.
never heard of it.
No.
It's that I just need that
it's so
one
bad.
reassurance and I'm
Yeah.
good. You can
Exactly.
fucking run over me with a
Exactly.
train and I'm like, it's okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know.
No, I know.
So let's so you made the decision. There was, I think, a clarifying event. You're like, all right, I'm officially done. So
Yeah.
you know, you split up and you had told us that you'd taken a year when the divorce was finalized to kind of find yourself. So let's talk about that. Like, what did that mean for you?
Okay, so I had been in some like intensive therapy since he had gotten a DUI in 2017. And this was 2019, early on in the year. And I just decided the minute that he left our home, I kind of said, I'm not going to date anybody. I don't want a relationship. I want to figure out why I have made these decisions and what I'm going to do for the future for me and my kids and for my career, for my education, for my home situation, for all of these kinds of things. This is the time that Abby needs to come back. So in my relationship, even up to that point of when he'd gotten a DUI in 2017, I knew I was missing. Like I was losing myself. I was dying inside. Like I was trapped in this situation that was horrible. That was like, I mean, it was just not a good situation. And so I had a lot of anxiety, I had a lot of depression, and I sought out therapy for that, professional therapy. And I also had a really good support group on Facebook of moms that I would credit like as my lifeline. That and my therapy was like, I mean, the two things that were just, I mean, the things that helped me stay alive basically through this whole thing.
So what did you figure out about yourself?
So I figured out that obviously I need some boundaries. So you guys have talked a little bit about that, but I'm
going to rename our show Boundaries.
Right.
Learn about it.
No one had ever talked to me really about what was acceptable in a healthy relationship and what was unacceptable in a healthy relationship. And so I'd had good examples of healthy relationships. That's not what I mean. I just mean no one had ever really sat down with me and talked me through what it meant to have healthy affection, a healthy sex life, a healthy communication with a partner, any of those things, like, and what my love language was, or what theirs was, or what their, any of the things that you can bring into a relationship. What I wanted. Did I want someone that I could have fun with? Did I want someone that I could talk intellectually with? Did I want someone who was at the same educational level as me, or was at least ambitious enough to strive for the things that they were passionate about? None of those conversations ever happened with me. And then I was a mom early. So then it was like, because the pressure was on to find the relationship, there wasn't really ever talk about what that meant and what that, it was just get into a relationship and do it right now because you need to be a real family. It wasn't, this is what makes a healthy relationship. And I don't think that that didn't serve me well, because I needed to have that, like, while I had good examples, I needed that conversation. I needed those tools. I needed that, like, this is how you set a boundary, and this is when you say fuck you to somebody, instead of, oh no, you can come back. Even though you did X, Y, and Z that I said I didn't want you to do, but I love you. Like, it's so, like, I just never had somebody like say those things to me or teach me how to do that, or be really like intentional about saying, this is what a healthy relationship is, and these are the components of it.
So Mike always talks about like sitting in the pain, and so like you go through that for a year. I think sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, like you feel like you make progress, and then there'll be a moment where you're lonely or you're in your head, and you inevitably start to kind of at least maybe backtrack. Like you start to second guess, you start to do the what if, like, oh, like, man, maybe if I would have done this differently. And then you start to question your boundaries. And it's a mental fucking exercise to be like, to then ground yourself and be like, all right, I'm having these feelings, but like they're based off of loneliness or whatever. Like you've done so much. So I know I've gone through that in the year that you kind of took a break from relationships or whatever. Did you find yourself doing that where you like kind of started backtracking in your mind? And if you did, like, what did you do to kind of correct yourself?
Sure. There's lots of time. I mean, like twice a week, probably. 2 steps back, 1 step forward, right? We're still making forward progress, I guess. But, I have my weak moments. I have the moments where I am super sad about the situation that my kids are in. I'm really, I don't regret getting out of my relationship at all. Hands down, do not regret getting out of that relationship. I'm happier now than I have ever been in my life with who I am and what I can do as far as setting an example for my kids. But there are times that really suck, that are like really like bring me back to, I think at one point you guys had talked about like memories and how that like sharing memories with your ex or whatever. we kind of do that sometimes about our kids, and I can't believe they're so big, and that kind of stuff. But those, I'm definitely getting better at not getting roped back into that, as far as an emotional conversation about my relationship with my ex-husband. So there is no.
All right, Abby. So we talked a little bit about how you have decided to take a year off of, kind of having these relationships post-divorce. Wanted to kind of get a better understanding of what you went through, especially as you were, in some of these quiet nights, or maybe you didn't have your kids or you weren't with friends, kind of how you dealt with it. So if you can talk us through that a little bit.
Okay. So we got divorced. Our final divorce decree was declared in May, and then the summer happened. And so all of a sudden I was without my kids for a whole week at a time, because in the summer we went week by week. That was the toughest part. But I was also still in therapy. So I did a lot of work with my counselor in how to fill up that time, and also how to use that time as reflective, because before that I'd never had a night off. And so it was, how can I utilize this time that I don't have to be on all the time? I don't have to be mom. I've still had Austin there, but he's a teenager. He's a little bit more self-sufficient. So it was retraining myself to figure out how to use that time in a better way to make me better, figure out, my stuff. I was not perfect in my relationship either. And so there's a lot of things that I wanted to fix about me and how I handled the things that happened in my relationship the way they did. And also, how do I teach my kids how not to do the things I did? And then how to really take the time for me to reflect on the relationship I was in, what I learned from that, how I can come out of that a better person, and then what not to take into the next relationship, while also rediscovering the things that I enjoyed doing, and how to make myself feel fulfilled, because I had always had this idea that another person was supposed to fulfill me. And so I had a lot of kids to do that. I also tried to force a relationship to do that. And so it was really important to me in that year to figure out what the things that made me happy, separate from what other people could contribute to my life. And so I did like a 9-day solo trip by myself to Utah, and I went to Zion National Park and went camping and hiking in one of the most beautiful places in the world. That was like my kind of spiritual awakening kind of time to reflect and to be with myself in my feelings, saying, in an incredibly beautiful place. Also, like, I think that I would suggest that to anybody that gets out of a relationship, to kind of go away on your own into a beautiful place and let that help you kind of renew your spirit and get back to yourself and to your roots and who you want to be going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, talk maybe a little bit about your experience. I mean, you've, from your divorce and then from the main relationship you had post-divorce, like your experience of kind of that, like maybe some of the things that you did early on that probably weren't the healthiest mentally, of like, all right, when I have this time to myself, versus where you feel that you are like right now, as far as like how you deal with the quiet time, I guess.
Yeah, well, so in the beginning, most of the time when I spent by myself was reflecting on the relationship, and just like what I did wrong in the relationship and what I could have done better, and and maybe even a little bit of like what I wanted more in the relationship. So early on, I thought like I was really honing in on, oh man, like I'm really getting like to know me and know what I want in my next relationship. And honestly, I think all I was doing was setting myself up for failure, because I knew what I wanted in the next relationship because it was what I wasn't getting in my previous relationship. So I focused on that like the whole time.
Yeah.
And now that I've been into another relationship and got all those things that I wanted, and realized that I set myself up to be in a disastrous relationship, I'm now to the point where I'm no longer thinking about what I want in a relationship and what I just want in life. Like for me, like what I need for me to be happy. And it's two different things. And I thought it was the same thing. And not until I came into a really bad and disastrous relationship did I realize that it's not that at all. Like I want standards, obviously, but like I need to know who I am and what I want. And not what I want in a relationship, but what I want for me. And once you figure that out, I think it's honestly a lot easier to weed out the people that aren't right for you.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's the epiphany that a lot of people, when they're like, when you can feel like you're healed, is like you get to that point, right? Because I think for me, when I'm in those quiet times, if I'm spending my time thinking about what went wrong,
and that's
in a past
what happens a lot.
relationship, and like what I could have done differently, when you finally switch the mindset to now all of a sudden you're thinking like, man, here's where my life is. This is what I want to do. This is what I want for my kids, or this is where I want to be. When you start thinking like that, that's when, like, if you want to put a label on it, I feel like you're healed. Yeah. If you're spending too much time like reminiscing on like the past and like all this, or I could have done this, and like you're still there. Like you're not healed yet. Yeah. So like everybody's pace is different, but trying to finally get to that point where it's like, no, like what you just said, like, okay, it doesn't matter about another person. It's like what, like where am I at with me? Yeah. And until you get to that point, like you probably shouldn't date anybody. Right. You shouldn't.
No, not probably. You should not date anybody, because if you're not in those set terms, not saying you couldn't meet a good person and then it works out for you, but I'm telling you that's probably more rare than meeting a person who is looking for somebody who's not knows what they want and just use them and gets right in there. And even if it's not on purpose, like there's just a lot of people that don't have their shit together. Like, I mean, look, we thought we had our shit together and we don't. Think about the people that don't even think about having their shit together. They definitely don't have their shit together. And there's a lot of those people out there. So like, and we're all trying to date and get a fucking family. We all want the same thing, but we all don't have a fucking clue what to do to get to it. So like if you can just get there, it's that field doesn't look so scary and it's not so complicated. You can just weed out all the fucking shit you don't need and find the one that's like, you know what? This is where I'm at. You are meeting all the boundaries that I have for myself. This is going to work. And if it doesn't work, it's not going to be a disaster. It's just going to be like, yeah, it just didn't work. Not, you ruined my life. We have kids you don't see. You're a piece of shit. You're an alcoholic, whatever. Like those things won't happen because we have boundaries and they wouldn't even have got through. Yep. Like that's, I think, is the most important thing. And that's what I've learned after my divorce, post-relationship divorce, not through my divorce. My divorce, I focused on the relationship and what I need in a relationship. And it got me to a worse spot. Like I thought I was doing all the self-healing that I thought I was doing. I thought I was in a great place. I waited 4 years to be with somebody thinking, fuck, you got an ace. Like this is it. Like, we're going to be great. Like, this is going to be the best relationship ever. And it was the worst relationship that could possibly have happened. So
yeah, I think that it's important to know, like, it feels almost like recovery. Right?
Oh, so I related to drugs.
I relapsed
constantly
a couple of times.
Yeah,
right?
Constantly.
Even in that year that I was taking for myself, I have relapsed into what could I have done more, or all of these good memories are popping up and I'm feeling sad about where my relationship went, or like, and it's never been, oh, he's a better person than I think he is. No, that's not it. No. It's what could I have done differently to make this even better? Is there a question in my mind of there was something else I could have done to make this work? And so that's a hard thing to get over. Mm-hmm. No matter how far removed you are from the relationship, I failed, right? And so what did I do that failed? And that's like the pressure that I put on myself probably, but also that, society puts on you, family puts on you, religion puts on you, all of those things that are in your life. Like, but we all relapse. It's normal. It's what you do with that for the next time. And so I've learned there are certain things that I cannot have conversations with my ex-husband, because it takes us down a path where it either leads to an argument or it leads to some sort of like, reeling me in, getting me riled up, some sort of thing. Even if it's him being an asshole, it's like, I just can't go there with this conversation. If it's not about the kids, if it's not about, it's almost like that I have to set a very clear, this is the communication that I'm willing to have with you. And then everything else is just we're not willing to have those conversations, because that can be, he does a really good job in my situation, does a really good job of making me feel guilty, or making me feel like a bad mom, or making me feel like I'm not worth, I'm not worthy, the way he did in our entire relationship. So it's not anything different, but it's my reaction to that now is different. And so I know that takes practice. It always, there are going to be times when I might get roped in. And then there are times when I'm like, cut it off early and we're just not going to go there, because it's like, I know where this is going and it's not going to happen. And I'm not going to let you have that kind of control over my life anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I compare it constantly when we talk about drugs or alcohol. Like, it's like you may leave the relationship, and let's say that means you quit drinking alcohol. You're like, I'm going to stop drinking. But then let's say you feel like you're strong enough that you're going to be around people that drink, even though you're really not good enough yet. That's like talking to the ex, or saying the conversations that that could get you back into it. Yeah. And you do it. And it's just like an alcoholic who has not been recovered enough to where they're weak and they're around people. And next thing you know, they slip and they drink again. Yeah. You're around that ex enough, you have a conversation, you slip and you jump back in. Even though you don't want to be in it, you are done. You're done. You don't want to be in it. You do. You relapse. And it happens a lot. And the best thing you can do is know your limits, know where you need to be, know where you're at in your recovery, and not do those things. And it really is. They go hand in hand. I know one's extreme over the other, but like it's the same, I feel like, steps.
It is. And it's interesting because when you have kids with somebody, you can't cut off all.
You cannot. It's like you're married to the fucking liquor store. It's like it's your job. You got to be there, so you got to figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah. So there is no opportunity for me to say, "Fuck you! I'm never going to see you again. I'm never going to talk to you again. I can block your phone number.
It's a lot tougher.
I can never communicate with you again," which I have done with every other relationship I've ever been in. Right. This is different, and so it's like, we still have to raise kids. We still have to do, the certain things that we have to do because we have kids together. But there's this level of, I know where that line is now. And it took me that year of kind of figuring out who Abby is again to say, we're not crossing that line. Now, that doesn't mean I don't allow that to happen sometimes, because I'm human and that happens. But it's not, there still is no feelings there. It's just, he does a really good job of making me feel really shitty about myself. And I have to remember that I can't let him, he does not have control over me anymore.
Do you feel obligated to raise them together? Or do you feel like your best bet is to somehow weed him out of the life?
Yes. I mean, that would be the ideal situation. Would be.
Have you thought about killing for future police? Just kidding.
No, I have never thought about that.
Joke.
No,
I'm saying. I'm sorry. I watched too many shows.
Okay. But I have a son whose father's not involved.
But he's not involved at all.
Right. You know how much easier it is when they're not involved?
So you have another one who's kind of tries to be.
Right.
How do you...
That is like, that's maddening sometimes.
Right.
I'm the good one.
Right. So that's what I mean. Do you worry? Like, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to put myself in a situation where it's like I have somebody who's not really in their life, but comes in their life. And tries to be whatever. I don't know exactly what it's hard to do. Are you just like, look, dude, you need to either be all in or not at all? Like you're fucking with them. Like, do the kids have issues with it? Like, I know they're younger, so I know it's not quite there yet. But they're gonna be.
Yeah, they're 5 and 3 now. They have struggled since the minute we got divorced. Amelia, especially, she's 5. She was in counseling all last summer because she just could not handle the fact that we were not living in the same house and that she had 2 houses and that this was, it was so tough on her. and she loves her dad. They both love their dad, right?
Mhm.
He's toxic and he's unhealthy. So until he figures that out, he can't be a good dad.
Even to them.
Yes,
He's
even to
toxic and
them.
unhealthy.
He is very manipulative, and he does things like we got married at the courthouse, and so he drives by the courthouse and shows them where we got married. And so that puts in their head like this is you know bad. You got married to my dad right there. And I'm like, yes, but
do they ask what happened? Do they say, "Did mommy, why are you and daddy not together?"
Yes, and Amelia more so because she's very intuitive and she picks up on emotions.
What do you say to that?
So I know I keep saying this, but I'm telling you, therapy is a lifesaver. So we have gone through significant intensive therapy.
You say we.
Me and her.
And the girl.
Me
Good.
and my daughter.
That's a good idea.
So that I can figure out how to be the healthy parent in her life and kind of counteract anything that happens.
Curious, what do they say for you to do with those kind of questions?
Tell her the truth. So there are things, so in an age appropriate way. So it's not like I'm telling her all the dirty secrets of our relationship.
So okay, give me an answer. What do you say? How do you tell a 5-year-old? Right.
So mommy and daddy did not have a good relationship, and we need to live separately in order to be able to raise you.
So you don't say I had to leave. You just say we had to leave.
Yeah.
Like okay. So what if he starts saying your mom left me? And she's like, why did you leave dad?
Yeah. And so she has said, yeah. So she has said things like,
because it sounds like something maybe a shitty parent would do.
Right. And he does. I mean, there are things all the time that she brings up that says, for example, there was a period of time where he was not allowed to see my older son, who is not his biological son. And so Amelia would come home and say, why don't you let my dad see Austin?
Okay, that's it. That was going to be
my
my
next question.
And I
would say, because, and she witnessed an incident between them. And so I would say, you remember the incident that you witnessed. Those are the reasons why your dad can't see, why, there's a reason why your dad does not have a relationship with Austin, and it's because it's unhealthy. So there's words to use, there's ways to phrase it. That's not like, this is what he did and he's a bad person. It's, this is unhealthy and it's not okay. And so until that can be healthy and okay, this is the situation we're in.
Do you immediately talk to him and be like, yo, what the fuck? Like, why are you saying this? Or do you just say
I've tried, but he doesn't recognize any of those things that he says.
Because I feel like it's going to be a battle with you.
Right.
Like, because we're all in situations and, kids ask questions, and my whole approach with two parents who are there for the kids, is you don't need to know. Like, it's not, doesn't matter what happened. Like, your parents love each other or love you. And that's what it is. Your mom loves you. I love you. It doesn't matter what happened. Like, we're not going to be together. But in a situation where you have one parent being like, well, this version did this. Like,
it's hard. It's hard because kids come home and they're,
how does that work?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't. I know.
To
but
be fair,
how do you handle it?
I know.
There are some
times that I handle it really well. There are some times that I don't.
Like, do you ever just want to beat the shit? Not that you would. Police officers in the future.
Yes, it is astronomically more frustrating to parent with him now.
Right, than when you were
than it was before. Right. Because before I had some semblance of control of what happened in my house and what kind of conversations they were
now they leave and they're with him.
I have no idea.
How does birthdays and all that stuff work? Do you guys communicate together? Like, are we either together? Do you just do your thing? And then if he ever's like, well, I want to do something, like, you're like, no.
So we have only had the first set of birthdays were under restraining order, so there was no kind of communication. Okay. The second set of birthdays this year, we took, for Amelia's birthday, we went to Disney on Ice together with both kids.
How was that?
It was a disaster. It was like every time I think that we can be good, healthy co-parents together, I'm reminded of why we are not married anymore.
Are you able to like regulate your emotional state
now
in front of your kids?
Yes.
Like, I mean, I can understand like if you get a phone call or a text message that just infuriates you.
Yeah.
Are you able to like mentally within like seconds, especially if your kids are in front of you, be like, okay, well, that's fucked up, but I'm gonna breathe. And I know they're like, and so like going back to Mike's question, like, what can you do? Like, I mean, if I put myself in your shoes, like that's the only thing you can do is like you can only control how you are in front of your kids. You can't control that stuff. And you know, you just hope if you do that habit over time, as your kids get older, they would recognize well, mom's level-headed and like.
We had a situation.
It'll like they'll realize as they get older.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids are smart.
Right. We had a situation where transportation was an issue. And so I basically said, look, on your time with the kids, you need to pick them up. I moved out of Franklin down to Nineveh. So now it's like a thing, right? And so I said, you have the opportunity to have your kids on a regular schedule like we've always had, but guess what? I'm not going to provide all the transportation anymore. You need to provide some transportation. So if on your time, you need to pick them up. And this was like a hard thing for me to like stand my ground, right? Because he has always done a good job of convincing me otherwise. Like I'm going to get in trouble or I'm going to be, So the first week I had just had surgery and I was recovering and he was supposed to pick them up on a certain day and time and he doesn't show up. Well, he calls the police on me because I didn't take the kids to him. So then he FaceTimes the girls and Amelia says, why didn't you come pick me up? And he said, well, your mom's lying to you. She's supposed to. And so then it was like, hang up. And then I had to have a conversation with Amelia to say, your dad is just as responsible as I am for providing transportation for you. So when it's your dad's time, he needs to come and pick you up. When it's my time to get you, I'll come and pick you up. And so having those really honest conversations without making it about we're angry at each other or we're right. I'm sticking to this is the situation we're in. Your dad needs to come and pick you up. He doesn't pick you up, then you just stay here. There's no like emotion about it. There's no like I'm angry. He wants to make it emotional, right? He wants to convince them that I'm this horrible person that's keeping them from him. When in reality, all I had to do was come and pick them up. That's all I had to do. So it's those kinds of things where in the moment, if I can stay calm and be like truthful without all the information, I don't need to give them every detail of everything we've argued about via text, but I can say, hey, we're both your parents and we're both responsible for you. And your dad's time, he needs to pick you up. Yeah. That's all there is to it. Oh, and so then he, after a couple of weeks of not seeing them, he came and picked them up. Mm. So it was like, I had to be able to stand firm in that though, because in the past 12 years, I had just let him railroad me into not doing what I wanted, and
no, 100%. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. So it's always an ongoing conversation with my kids. They ask a lot of questions. I try to be as honest as I can they're only 5 and 3. So really making sure it's age appropriate and really not making it an emotional conversation.
Honestly, it's the best advice. Not being emotional, just giving them what they need to know and at the age that they're in. Look, my kids, they were young around that age too when we got divorced, and now they're 13 and 11 and they still ask questions. They still want to know things and they still have hope. They still have hope that somehow we'll be back together. They've seen movies and look, well, they did it, and I'm like, and I can only be as honest as I can be and as firm as I can be. Like, guys, look, it's never gonna happen. I love your mom. We love each other. We love you. You're our children. It's never gonna change. But we're not gonna be together ever again. Yeah. And you're always gonna have us as your parents. Though there's nothing that's ever gonna change other than we're not gonna be together in your life. They just need that for whatever
Amelia
reason.
Does need some constant reassurance.
And I don't know what that's like because I wasn't in a divorce family. You weren't, and you weren't. So we don't understand it. And I can only sympathize and empathize and I just feel terrible about it. And so I understand why they ask those questions. I understand why they need to hear that. And it breaks my heart every time they ask, because I'm just like, God, you're still holding on to hope. Like, how sad. Like, I feel so bad for you that you still hope that you can have that. And like, I know they want that. And it does break my heart to tell them it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
But like, it is like, they need to hear it. They need to be consistent. It needs to be consistent things. And it needs to be not emotional. It needs to be not like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, it just needs to be, I'm your parent. This is what I'm saying. You need to hear it. That's how it is. I do think they responded. I really do.
Yeah. I have been emotional in front of my kids as far as being really sad about the fact that I don't get to have them all the time. So I went from 24/7 supermom, right, to all of a sudden in a matter of days not having them for weeks at a time because our divorce fell right before summertime. And so that was like, I mean, torture. And so I have been really, really open with my kids on an emotional level for that reason, not about my relationship with him or giving them any false hope about that, but just about, this is a really sad time for mommy. I'm really sad that I don't get to see you every day. I'm really sad that me and daddy aren't together anymore. I'm allowed to be sad about that, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to get back together with him. And so having those, it is important to have emotional conversations at certain times when it's not about he said, she said, this, we're fighting about this one thing, or we're having an argument about something. But to also be true to, this is, mommy's having a hard time right now because I'm like, I'm grieving the life that I thought I would have. Right. Not that I'm sad about your dad necessarily, but I'm grieving the life that I thought we all were going to have together. And then I'm sad that you don't get to experience a life with your mom and dad together.
Yeah. This is just a question, just because I'm curious, because I wonder myself. Do you feel like telling your kids that you miss them and that you wish they were there and that you hate that they're not, do you think it puts extra pressure on them to be like, well, I don't know, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm not with you. Like, I'm with dad. Now, am I not supposed to enjoy being with dad? Like, I only ask because I think I have unnecessarily done something like that with my kids, where I put pressure on them, like, oh, I'm going to miss you guys. Like, I wish you were here. And like, I feel like, is that right of me to say that to them?
That because the hope that they have.
Because it's like, because I'm like, should I say that? Like, because obviously that's how I feel. I just want them to know.
Well, and I feel there have been certainly lots of times when I felt like I don't want them to feel like they have to choose between me and him.
Right, because that's my biggest fear is like they worry they're in the middle. I do not ever want them to feel like they're in the middle.
So we did a lot of work with Amelia's counselor about having a regular calendar and a schedule. And so we had like a whiteboard calendar with magnets on it. So she knew when she could expect to be at daddy's house and she knew when she was going to be at home. And so she knew how many sleeps it was going to be. And that was like, she needs that like constant reassurance of when am I going to see my dad again? When am I going to come home again? That routine for her really makes her feel more secure.
Counseling, man.
The 3-year-old is not necessarily as concerned with that kind of stuff, but Amelia was really like, she needed that like constant structure. And so we did, there are a lot of things that we implemented in my house that made her feel more secure about going back and forth. She also, there was a time when she's like, nobody at school lives in 2 houses. I'm the only one that has 2 houses. So it's like, what do you say? Like, how do you help your kid through that? I'm like, and our houses are totally different. Right. Like they're, Disney World dad on one side and structure, discipline.
Follow up to my next question. Perfect. Yeah. How do you, 2 different households, clearly 2 different rules. Yeah. Do they ever come back and act totally different and be like,
it takes 2 days to recover. Okay, so it takes 2 days to recover.
Because we kind of talked about this.
And it is torture. Complete torture.
So you got to basically reprogram
meltdowns from the minute they walk in for 48 hours. It is awful.
Man, it sucks,
And it's tough. Like, and over time.
Do you ever try to talk to him about it? Like, look, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we need to have these kind of rules. Like, why are you letting him do this? Do you guys ever have those conversations?
So the problem with this is that he works on the days he has them, actually. So they're at his mom's house or his sister's house or his niece's house. They're like
Okay, so
They're not necessarily even with
grandma
him,
lets them run
right?
whatever. She's grandma.
Right.
Okay.
And so it's not consistent over there. And at my house, we are like a tight Navy ship.
Have
right?
you ever
Like,
said like, look, we need to get on the same page? You guys
oh
ever
yeah,
try to do
we've
that?
tried to have those conversations, but it
doesn't
just
work.
doesn't. Because we can't communicate with each other without arguing. It does like there's no productive communication.
So what? It's okay. So then, because we talked about how we get that. So like, you don't get that. So
Right.
what's your? How
So
do you
the
do it?
only
How do
thing
you
that
handle
I can do is when they're at my house, I only have control over what's happening at my
Mhm.
house. And so there are techniques I've learned and things I've learned to do with, especially Amelia, because she's the one that really has had the most difficult time with this. There are definitely things that I know for her that work to kind of get her back into the groove a little smoother. But it's always a battle. It's always. And so then that's like in my head, I'm like, did I do the right thing? Am I like, not like I don't want to get back into that relationship, but like, what am I doing to my kids?
Yeah.
You know, they're like,
Yeah.
obviously they're suffering or they're, having a difficult time. And am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing to fix that or to make that right for them or, to provide the healthy space they need, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So that's, when 100% of the pressure is on me to be the good parent, like I don't know how to do that necessarily. And if I have a bad day, is that going to fuck them up forever? When their other parent is just not.
Well, and like, I mean, I feel like that's a whole episode in and of itself. Is
Yeah.
like you're still trying to figure out things about you and like what you want, while at the same time trying to be, a mature, responsible parent. Like it's tough.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of factors at play there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So maybe we'll, if you want to come back, maybe that'll pick up, and then we can also talk about just coming out of that 1 year kind of hiatus that you took to kind of find yourself, like where you're where you're at and where that's taking you. So maybe we'll do that. If you're willing to come back, we can do kind of a parenting / where's Abby post 1 year of figuring her shit out.
Okay.
And go from there. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you shared, and I thought that was great.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
until next time, thanks guys.